Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about how to persuade people with science. Stay tuned. If you're like me, you want your opinions to be based on the best knowledge that we have available. Now there's an art to making sure that your opinions are informed by science. So today we're going to talk about finding research articles and using those articles to support your ideas. Empirical research that has been peer-reviewed by experts is the most convincing data that we have. If you have an important issue and you want to persuade people to support your position, showing them that science is on your side is one good way to do that. Before we get too far into this, one mistake that many well-intentioned people make is to pick their position first and then try to find data that supports it. This often involves ignoring any research or results that you might find to the contrary. This is something called confirmation bias, and it's not good. Not only is this dishonest, it will also put you in the embarrassing position of being easily out-argued by somebody who has a better grasp of the full context of the results and the literature in question. So, the first step to creating an argument based on science is always to find out what the data says and how it was collected. Once you know what the research says, then you can formulate your informed position. Now, sometimes you might find that it doesn't say what you want it to say. And if that's the case, the first thing you could consider is maybe you might be wrong. It's okay if the results are mixed or maybe they don't have a clear answer one way or the other, but being honest about what the actual data says puts you in a stronger position to argue your point. So, how do you find the data that you need? Well, first we have to talk about the difference between a journal article and an article, say, on a news site. News sites are usually secondary sources, meaning they're not the ones who conducted the data collection and analysis. They're usually written for a broad audience, and sometimes they make mistakes, or they are trying to support a specific agenda, much like the confirmation bias we were just talking about. On the other hand, journal articles in the scientific literature are what we call primary sources. They're written by the people who actually conducted and collected and analyzed the data. And they're carefully written for specialists in that field. Often they undergo a process of peer review, which ensures that the claims don't go beyond the data, at least in theory. Whenever possible, you should try to use primary sources, such as academic research articles. Secondary sources are great and fun, but if you're going to cite information from the scientific literature, you should go straight to the source. So how do you do that? How do you find the source of these articles? Databases. There are a number of databases focused on academic research that can be used. Some of them are really good, such as in psychology, we have one called PsycInfo, but that must be accessed through a library such as your local college library. Some public libraries have access, or you can purchase access to that database through the American Psychological Association. The good news about this kind of database is that the results you get tend to be really high quality. On the other hand, if you don't have access to that, you do have access to Google Scholar. Google Scholar is a publicly available database that you can access from any web browser. The good news is it's free and it usually gives you more results than the specialized databases. The problem is sometimes the quality can be a little questionable on some of the journal articles that you find. So you have to be a little careful about that. When you're just starting out, I recommend starting with the tried and true academic databases. And then when you get some feel for what good quality work looks like, then you can start using Google Scholar more. Now, when you go to the database, the next step is to start searching. And when you're searching the database, it's important to use several keywords. Try a lot of searches. After all, searches are fast. So for example, if I'm interested in finding anything about laughter and depression, I might search for laughter and depression, but I might also search for laughter and mood disorders, or laughter and mental illness, or humor and depression, humor and mood disorders, humor and mental illness, and so on and so forth. And try to come up with a lot of search terms and see what kind of results that you get. Now, when I'm going through my search results, I tend to prefer articles that have been cited many times. I also tend to prefer recent articles over older articles to make sure I'm getting the most up-to-date information. The good news is most of these databases have search options that allow you to limit your search to certain years. When you see a title that seems relevant, then you can read the abstract. Now, you may find a lot of junk that you don't care about, but when you find a good one, it's extremely valuable. Think about it like a slot machine. Most of the time you pull the handle and you get nothing, but sometimes you pull the handle and you hit the jackpot. Once you find an article that you know you want to read, then the next step is going to be getting a hold of the actual article so you can read it. Now, many times a version of the article will be available for free online. This is especially true if the work was supported by public tax dollars. This wasn't always the case, but this is getting better and better. If your article isn't available online, there are a number of things you can try. First, you can try through a library's interlibrary loan. A lot of times libraries have an interlibrary loan desk where you simply fill out a form, usually a digital form these days, and the library will get your article and send it to you. Another option is to check the author's website or check an academic networking site like researchgate.net. Sometimes authors post versions of their papers on those places. And if all else fails, you can contact the author and see if they're willing to send you a copy of the paper. Once you finally have the article, then you read it. Okay, I know that sounds simple, but it may not be so straightforward. Sometimes academic writing is hard to read. It's full of jargon and unusual language, like the word elicited. Often there are a lot of statistics that you may or may not understand, but do the best you can, and with lots of practice, it gets much faster and easier. The good news is there's a typical format to academic writing in psychology and related fields that makes it much easier to follow. Since you probably already read the title and the abstract when you were searching for the article, the next part of the paper that you need to know about is the introduction. The introduction is going to give you the relevant background studies, and it's going to define all the necessary concepts. It's going to provide the rationale for the study. The next section would be the methods section, and the methods section is going to describe how the data was collected, who the participants were, all the materials that were used, and the procedures that they went through in order to step by step collect the data. After the methods section is the results, which explains how the data were analyzed, any statistical tests that were run, and whether there were statistically significant differences between conditions in the experiment and things like that. Finally, the discussion section interprets the meaning of the results and presents those experiments in the context of the previous studies cited in the introduction. Now, this is where the authors make their arguments about what the data show and how it fits with what we already know. All of these sections play critical roles, and no one is more important than the others. Now, you may want to skim some sections and skip to the areas that you're most interested in, with the idea that you can always go back and read the other sections. But when you're just starting out and you don't have a lot of experience reading scientific papers, I recommend going through the whole thing until you get a feel for what to look for. Another cool thing you can do in this process is you can use this article to find references for other related work. Look at the work that was cited in that paper to see what other people have done on related work. You can also search the database for other works that cited this paper. So now you can start binging everything you can on the topic you're interested in to learn as much as you can about that topic. Once you know what the relevant arguments are and what the data says, congratulations, you've got an informed opinion. And you can support it by citing your sources. I hope this encourages you to wade into the ocean of academic knowledge and see how the water feels. Remember, a little humility and openness goes a long way, and argue responsibly. We have more videos on psychology and psychology research coming up, so like, subscribe, and until next time, keep thinking. Let's see, what do we have here? Okay. How many hours does it take to make a friend? Having friends is an important predictor of happiness and life satisfaction. It is not possible to have friends without first making friends. Oh no.